This is the Book Deal Podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books.
We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal.
So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strachan.
I'm Madeleine Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rye.
And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors,
one deal at a time. The Book Deal Podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present, and emerging.
Hello, wonderful podcast friends. I'm Tina Strachan, and welcome to the summer season of the Book Deal Podcast for the 25-26 years. We have had a huge year made possible by your incredible support. But it's time for Madeleine, Natasha and I to have a little break. We have lots of writing to do, lots of gardening, lots of family time, and a fair bit of rest due to help us reset and prepare for another huge year in 2026. So over the next 5 weeks, we will be bringing you some of our most played eps of all time. Maybe they're ones you've not had a chance to listen to yet, or maybe you're listening for a second time and hearing new details you missed the first time. Either way, we hope you enjoy the eps and have a magical summer break or winter break for all of our Northern Hemisphere listeners. See you soon with new episodes of the Book Deal Podcast.
Ruby Ashby Orr is a publisher in the general list at Affirm Press and works remotely from Launceston. She began her publishing career in 2013 and has since worked on a wide range of books, including novels by Christian White, Anna Downs and Pip Williams, and memoirs by Dennis Lilly and Kevin Sheedy. Ruby is also my publisher, and from the moment we first chatted about my debut novel, The Butterfly Women, I knew she would be the perfect person to help me bring it into the world. I know several of Ruby's other authors, and I can attest that she is universally adored by all for her intelligence and kindness. Tina and I were so lucky to take some time out of Ruby's busy calendar to discuss how to perfect your pitch, insights into the publishing industry, and things you can do to get a publisher's attention. I'd suggest taking notes for this one.
We are so excited to have you here. I've heard a lot about you, and the reason being is, and lots of really great things, of course, but you are actually Madeleine's publisher.
Yeah, very exciting for me. Got Madeleine's debut novel coming out. It's called The Butterfly Women. It's out in May.
Oh, Ruby, you're already pitching me. I love it.
Always, at all times, I'm here for you. But absolutely, it is a really, really stunning historical novel, which is one of my favourite genres as well. And we're already talking big in the team about Madeleine and about the book. So if you haven't, I'm sure if you listen to the podcast, you're probably already across it. But if not, you'll be hearing about it very soon.
Oh, isn't Ruby the best?
She's so exciting.
I just need to re-record and listen to that, I think, and just, repeat that. So I remember we had this summer launch party with Affirm, I think at the start of the year, Ruby, and you were so good because we were sort of talking with booksellers and other people in the industry, and you did this great pitch to this bookseller, and I was like, oh, I just need to remember everything you just said because you're so, so good at it. It's like you've done this before.
That's very kind of you, but you would have come across a lot of pitches, and probably a lot of pitches that aren't super exciting. So I'm also quite conscious that I have to do a decent job pitching your book because you would have had so many lackluster pitches when you were a bookseller, and I know that makes a massive difference because if you don't get the booksellers on board, then you're pretty much done. It's such a part of the publishing process. So
it's true, short and sharp. I think that was the. We've already hit a top tip, I think, Tina.
I know. I was going to say, we were going to talk about pitches.
Yeah.
So on pitches then, Ruby, we were going to talk about that, so we may as well talk about it now. What makes a good pitch to you, particularly those who are perhaps unpublished and looking to get published?
Short is actually a really good thing to keep in mind, even if it's never going to be a full pitch, but having a short version that you know how to just put out there that just touches on the most interesting aspects of your book is helpful because people switch off so fast. Publishers are getting so many pitches. They're looking for points of difference. They're looking for what they'll be able to translate to the booksellers, who are getting even more pitches than the publisher is. So something quick and immediately interesting in your back pocket is very, very helpful. The broader pitch that, again, you don't want to be going super long and detailed into things, but it's useful if you do a bit of our work for us. For instance, if you are able to come up with some comparison titles, if you can talk about, where it would sit in a bookshop, if you can talk about even how you picture the cover, things like that can be quite helpful, because we start getting an image in our head and we think, okay, I can see how this is going to fit in the market. I can see how this is going to get out there. I mean, it's a tough thing for a writer to do, and I'm really conscious of that, because we're that horrible, intersection of art and commerce sort of spot. So something that is beautiful and important and true has to be turned into a product that can go on a shelf and have a price sticker on it. And we're kind of the first point for that process to start, and that's really tough. But authors who are able to think about it in those terms have taken a really helpful first step, I think, for their whole publishing process.
Mm.
So is that something, Ruby, that you suggest people put in a query letter?
Yeah, so if you're querying, so let's say you've got a one-page letter, if you can mention sort of a really short summary of what the book's about, what it's similar to, what its genre is, that's the main thing. If you know a little bit about the publisher and have a sense of why you want them to be your publisher, that's also quite helpful. If you can let them know that, for instance, if they've published similar books to yours that you really enjoyed, or if there's some other aspect of their particular kind of publishing that you really appreciate, then it can be helpful, because some authors understandably might send out just a basic letter that's the same every single time. But that awareness of the publisher as a specific publisher can be quite helpful as well.
Yeah, it just shows doing your research, like the author has done their research as well and is invested and understands the market. I think it's really important. And, authors and writers, they can just go to bookshops and sort of work out, well, where would my book fit, and have a look at some of the titles around it.
And think about the books that influenced you. I mean, think about the books that influenced you. Find the publishers that published those. That's often a really great first step. And see if that's somewhere that you can get in touch with, or ideally place your book with.
I've heard before as well, Ruby, that sometimes it's really beneficial if you've met a publisher before, either at a conference or through an assessment or like a pitch party, or even if you've just seen them talk at a conference or a festival. Sometimes it's good to put that in your query letter too. So you're sort of making it personalized.
Yeah.
Just like, I met you through this, assessment once upon a time, and you said you were interested in this, so I'm sending you my thing that's like this. Is that something
Absolutely.
that
Look, if that does happen, I know that's really rare for a lot of people, but that is a great idea. And I think doing things like what you did, as far as going to those pitching events and putting the face to the concept, it is hugely helpful. It gives you much more chance of getting noticed than being just a name in the inbox of their general submissions, which is very rarely being looked at by like the person that you want it to be looked at by. Every publisher does it differently, but general submissions will often have, junior staff filtering through it, or it will be split up between different staff members. So you kind of don't know who's going to get to it. And if you've got a really good sense that this person is going to love your book, the better work you can do to get directly to them, the more helpful that will be in getting their attention and getting their attention held long enough to consider signing you.
And that goes down again to doing your research as well, looking at, well, what publishers might my work be best suited towards. And certainly that was something that I did before pitching to you at the Australian Society of Authors Literary Speed Dating, which I think I just counted was 21 months ago. So 2023, can you believe that? Like, it just feels like time's gone so quickly. But certainly I Googled you a lot and listened to some of your interviews, Ruby, just to get a sense of you and your vibe. And I was like, oh no, I think she'll like 19th century historical fiction. Like, I think this is good.
All right. Terrifying. You've terrified me twice. You terrified me with telling me that you've researched me, and you've terrified me by telling me that Affirm Press debut authors have their own WhatsApp group where they talk about us behind our backs. I've told everybody, and we've all just had this horror response when we're not okay. We're accepting it, but we feel deeply uncomfortable. I just hope you know that.
You're not supposed to tell her that, Madeleine.
I know, I did. I was like, by the way, we have this thing and it's like a union. But no, we love Affirm Press. Affirm Press is the best publisher ever. That's definitely everything that we discuss on the group.
That's what I insist on hearing.
Oh, I love it. No, we've got a really good community, I think, in the Affirm Press group. Like, we've got a really great group of authors there. So you've put me on the spot there, Ruby. I like that.
Sorry.
I'm going to move it away from that because Madeleine's blushing now. You just mentioned about the pitch event, and I don't think we've really spoken much about that. And Madeleine, you've told me a little bit about it, but it's not something that I've come across on my publishing journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's run by the Australian Society of Authors. They've been doing it for a while now. So the first one I did was actually in person, like in the old days, in a room. And I had one author after another sitting before me, and some of them brought props. It was very exciting. And they would have to pitch in, I think it's 3 minutes. Is that right, Madeleine?
Yeah, it's 3 minutes. Not long.
And then they sort of it's not long at all, hop to the next person. But I've been doing that on Zoom, the current version, for the last few years, and I find it really helpful. I found a few books through it over the years, and it is that really intensive process. And I believe ASA really help you to develop your pitch, Madeleine, from memory.
So you can do a Pitch Perfect course with the ASA in the lead up to literary speed dating, which I'd highly recommend to everyone. It gives you a bit of a structure about how to approach the pitch, which I think is helpful because 3 minutes is not long. And if you're starting to waffle and not hit the key points, like the comparison titles, like the reasons why this book would be well suited to the publisher, it's probably not going to be. It doesn't matter how good your work is. It's got to hit some of those key points.
Like we were talking about earlier, when you have someone sitting in front of you and they're a human and they're talking about their book, it is that much more likely to get your attention because, I mean, that's just the basic art of conversation is people look you in the eye, you get a sense of them as a person, you care more about their story. So it's quite clever and I think quite an effective way to get authors and publishers together. And now that that's doable through Zoom, it also means that it's nationally, you can get in touch with publishers that in the past would have been quite hard to get in touch with face-to-face unless you were in the same area doing the same going to the same literary events and the same book launches and that sort of thing.
Are you just looking at the work itself in during those pitches, or because you talked about the story behind the story, are you also looking into that too?
Definitely looking at the story behind the story and also getting a sense of whether the author can pitch their book in a way that would work with media. It's one of the things we have to be aware of is that there will be a marketing and publicity campaign down the track, and we want the author to be able to do that effectively, to perform, to speak confidently. They don't have to be, an absolute celebrity style talker, but they do need to be able to speak cohesively and confidently about their book. So we're keeping an eye on that. The story behind the story, as you say, is really useful. Publicity can be hard, especially for debuts. So having some kind of hook that's really interesting that we think could make good radio is really, really handy for that sort of thing. We'll be keeping an eye out for that.
I do have one very quick question. I think it's a yes or no one, Ruby. I think I already know the answer. Props in a pitch, yes or no?
It's actually not a yes or no answer.
Oh.
Depends on how funny you are.
Okay.
What's the best prop you've seen used?
You know what? I can't think of many off the top of my head. I can imagine that somebody because I don't want to embarrass anybody who might be listening, because I've seen some ones where I was like, oh, but I do imagine that you could bring something out for the right kind of book and make it interesting or funny. So I don't want to completely say no to props, but I think you'd have to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek doing it, is all I would suggest.
I've seen Tina bring out a prop before, but a live prop too.
See, that is a great idea. I think I could be in for that.
A live prop. That sounds, yeah.
Is it a tiny possum?
It was a possum.
Oh, that would catch my attention.
Yeah. Oh, good, because that's what I used for my bookseller video. For context, obviously, if you don't know, my book is about a girl who lives in a zoo, so it was relevant.
I think that's perfect. I think that's the perfect prop. I think you nailed it. So props are okay as long as something like that.
I didn't even consider that I'd done that, actually, and that was a prop. Okay, good one. Okay, so taking a step back. So Ruby, tell us, we want to know a little bit about yourself, and I've heard that you've recently been promoted to the role of publisher in Affirm, so congratulations for that.
Thank you.
So from the outside, publishing and the whole industry just sounds extremely dreamy. Can you tell us, was this a dream of yours? Is this where you always wanted to be?
It was always something in my head as a possibility, because I think like many of us, I was a booky kind of kid. I read a lot. I wanted to be a writer, maybe. I also, at various points wanted to be a ballet dancer and an astronaut and a artist. So I can't say that it was like my always dream, but I was going in the direction of writing. I did a degree, an arts degree with literature as my major, and thought that's not terribly practical. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. So maybe I could try publishing. And then when it came time, I got a chance to go do some postgrad work, a postgrad degree in creative writing, publishing and editing. And I was at the time as interested in the creative writing as the publishing and editing. But then when I was looking more into the editorial classes and those sorts of things, I just enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. I liked the practicality of it. So I got an internship as part of that course and kind of stayed in publishing forever. Stayed at Affirm Press in publishing.
And you were one of the founding you were an intern, weren't you, with Martin and Kieran at the initial stages of Affirm?
Yeah, so our former owners, they've just sold the company. So this is a big process. But about 10 years ago, Kieran Rogers and Martin Hughes kind of took, Affirm Press already existed, but it was a bit of a hobby kind of publisher, with Martin Hughes doing most of the work, about 3 books a year. So about 10, 11 years ago, Kieran hopped on board. He's extremely experienced sales director, really understands the sales side of publishing, and they made it into this great, big, significant local publisher. And I started off as an intern at the same time, and then just kind of stuck around, like wedging myself into it so they couldn't get rid of me.
And you must love it then, Ruby. 10 years later, and you're now a publisher. Can you talk a little bit about why Affirm is a little bit different, I suppose, to other publishers, and a bit about your role, or the roles that you've done?
So it's actually hard for me to say how it's different to other publishers, partly because I've never worked at any other publishers. So I'm almost learning that a little bit now. But there's obviously a big difference between independent publishers in Australia and the big internationals. So Affirm Press has always been an independent local publisher, which tends to mean we have a very big focus on Australian books. We've historically also had a big focus on books that are sort of socially positive, if that's a phrase. I don't know if it is, but we'll take it. We were originally part owned by Graham Wise, who brought The Body Shop to Australia, and he's always been really interested in sort of ethical business. And so Affirm Press was part of that. A lot of what we were focused on doing was we'd publish really good, strong books in a wide range of genres, but it was important to us that they were positive contributions to the world, to the literary landscape, all those sorts of things. So that's very much a part of why so many of us in the team got into publishing, and I think it's guided a lot of what we've done. But we're also very I'd like to think we're reasonably savvy as far as the business side of things and want to make big successes. So we've managed to make those two aspects of the business work pretty well, I think, and that's been really nice and really satisfying over the years.
So in terms of the publishing landscape, because this might be fairly new to a lot of our listeners. You mentioned the independent publishers, which are, some of them are local, and so there's like the small publishers, small press, and I wouldn't say Affirm, before it was at least acquired, was considered in a small press. Was it? Is it sort of that medium size? Because it grew quite quickly.
Yeah, and so there are independent publishers that are reasonably big. Obviously, Allen and Unwin are an independent publisher because they're Australian owned. They're not owned by some bigger corporate entity. Hardy Grant, they're the other biggest independent Australian publisher. But then we also have the big multinationals. So our partner company now, Simon & Schuster, there's Hachette, Penguin Random House. They're kind of, and most people I think will have come across those and might sort of see them on their books that they've enjoyed. And unless you're really paying attention to the publishing industry, you might not realise where your book's being published, which is quite interesting, I think, unless you're someone who's wanting to get published. Often most people I speak to have never heard of Affirm Press, and that's okay. But they might have heard of some of the books we've published, and that's quite exciting. So whereas I think most people will have heard of the big internationals just because they're so prominent. Those are really well-known brands. So that's kind of an interesting thing that I'm getting my head around at the moment, is how it works differently when you have a big international publisher that you're working with and they have all these connections to offices in the UK and the US, and it's a whole different landscape, to use that term again. So I'm going to be interested to see what it's like. I'm quite excited.
It's exciting. It's a big move.
Yeah.
Ruby, we were talking earlier about pitching and a little bit about how to perfect your pitch. So Affirm are open for submissions on a regular basis. It used to be monthly. Is it still monthly for adults, or has it gone to 6 monthly?
It is monthly for now. If that changes, we'll announce it.
Okay. All right. Yes, I wasn't sure if it had gone to 6 monthly for kids.
The kids have gone to 6 months.
Yes. Okay, that's
what I've always had a real, big piles to get through, which we do too, but sometimes I think it can be a bit harder for them to get through their submissions.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So there's just a lot more submissions for kids' books in general.
Or whether it's that they also do have quite a full list, so they're probably not as kind of hunting for things quite as much. But yeah, it's
okay. I've actually heard that before, actually, Ruby, that particularly for picture books as well, like the list has been, and this is across multiple different publishers, people have been acquiring years in advance. So it's actually, if you're lucky enough to get picked up, your book might not be coming out for years because of delays with illustrators and all sorts of other things.
Yeah, they work on much longer timelines than certainly our general list, which is interesting. And yeah, partly because they're so high production and the illustration process is such a big one. And I don't know if it's also something to do with the fact that there's less need in kids publishing to respond to things happening around them so much and trends. And they do have trends, but certainly in picture books, for instance, it doesn't have to be as linked into global affairs and stuff like that as you would expect adult publishing to be.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And so can you give us some advice? Like we've spoken about how to create our pictures and, including a little bit about ourselves in there. Do you have any advice for people submitting through this process to Affirm? How can they make their submission stand out?
So think about your book as a product. Again, sort of coming back to that, think about why someone who is not you or someone who loves you would want to read it, and focus on that. Get that elevator pitch down quickly and make it the very first thing that a publisher will read when they're reading your submission, and practice it. Like, be that person who wants to talk about their book at a dinner party, but see if you can do it in a way that makes the person that you're talking to actually genuinely interested. It's a bit of a process, but yeah, start to think about why this story might be interesting to someone who's never heard of you and has no knowledge of your history and your story. What's the most interesting part? That's your hook. Put it up front and build your pitch around that.
No, that's really good advice. I'm always so curious to know, how do you manage to balance your time? Because you've obviously you're getting pitches through the submissions portal, you're getting pitches done outside through things like literary speed dating, but you've also got your current list that you're trying to work through, an editorial, you've got big May meetings, you've got sales, you've got all sorts. Like, how do you, and reading a book, particularly if it's an adult fiction as well, you're looking at 90,000 words. Like, these things take time. How do you balance all that?
Oh, badly, really badly. No, you just make it happen. You become more efficient at reading, and also more efficient at reading the start of something and going, this one's not for me, and figuring out which ones you're willing to take the risk of missing some gold and being like, look, it's just not there. I'm going to put that aside and turn to something that's interesting me more. But yeah, it just takes practice. It takes practice to recognize what will work in the market, to spot aspects of writing that maybe are signals that the rest of the book is not going to work out. It's just takes years and years of reading lots of manuscripts, really. And then as far as balancing it with the other work, again, experience helps. Spending time doing structural edits, knowing what to look for, knowing how to come up with solutions and what are the most efficient solutions, all that sort of stuff. Just comes with practice, and slowly you can find you can do more than you maybe would have thought of at the beginning.
So that's actually a really interesting thing. And I think really important for people who are submitting, do you read the full manuscript if it comes to you? It might have gone through a triage perhaps before it gets to your desk, but do you read the full thing? Or do you just, when you get a sense of the book, and if it's do you hit a point where it's a yes, no?
There's always a yes, no point, but it could come at any stage in the reading process. Sometimes you have to read through to the end to realize that it's not working out, and that can be really disappointing. And you can sort of figure out how to read quite quickly when you've got a sense of the book as a whole and see where it's headed. But if I was serious about acquiring a book, I would read the whole thing, of course, and that's kind of essential because that's my first structural read as well. If I do manage to acquire the book, then I want to be able to get straight into, as much as possible, giving them structural feedback so that they can get the next draft going. So that's how I would look at that. But often, with general submissions, we only ask people to send the first 3 chapters because often you'll know from the first 3 chapters and a detailed synopsis, here's a big one. If your book has a twist or something exciting in it, put it in the synopsis. Don't hold off. Don't try to keep a secret, because if it's the thing that makes your book really amazing to read, we're not going to believe you unless you let us know ahead of time. We're not going to, can't just say, it's got a great twist. Tell us what the twist is. And if it really is great, we'll go, oh. And, I just had this recently. We were we have a mentorship with Varuna where people submit drafts and works in progress in the crime, thriller and mystery genre. And one of those submissions, which is fantastic, I won't go into it too much, had really strong 3 first chapters. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. But then I read the synopsis and saw the twist. It's like, done. I want this in. It's fantastic. So it's worth doing.
We touched on that just in our last chat, didn't we, Madeleine, about synopsis? We were trying to give some tips on synopsis. So that's been really helpful. And yes, just to echo the point of making sure you put everything in your synopsis. It's not like the back of the book where you're trying to keep some stuff secret. It's about showing the ending, and especially if you've got twists in there, of course.
And when you think about synopsis as different to a blurb, we'll want you to submit a blurb because the blurb is essentially a pitch, right? That's, why is this book interesting? Why would someone browsing want to read it? A synopsis is more of it's like more of a functional thing. It's to let the publisher who you're hoping will work with you on the book know all the details. So you just want it to be really clear and quite straightforward. So use all your salesy, flashy language for the pitch, for the blurb, and just be really straightforward and clear in your synopsis. That's extremely helpful if you can do that.
That's a great tip. Do you read the synopsis first before you read those 3 chapters?
No, not generally.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I'll start with the 3 chapters, get a sense if they're a writer who seems like they know what they're doing. Sometimes I only need to read 3 paragraphs. Sometimes I get to the end of the 3 chapters and I think, oh, there's something going on here. I don't know if it can sustain the whole thing. And then I'll read the synopsis and that will help me make the call on the next step.
Okay, so first 3 paragraphs are key, everybody.
No, that's only if it's like someone who's really just starting to learn we get a really wide range of submissions. It's actually amazing. So, and I kind of love that, you get to see people at all levels of writing. And, sometimes you do get submissions that are clearly someone who's just started writing and, you can tell pretty quickly they're not ready, but we get every single level of writer coming through our general submissions, which is why it takes so long to go through them.
I guess that brings us to our next question then of why rejections? Why might authors be rejected? And like you said, it could just be because of the writing. Otherwise, there could be something else in the story. Is there anything that stands out, any common mistakes that people are making that would lead to a no?
The biggest mistake that an author submitting can make is to, and we've talked about this already, not know what the publisher publishes. If you're submitting a poetry manuscript to a non-poetry publisher, then that's a pretty big mistake. Some of this can get quite specific and detailed though, and I wouldn't blame people for not knowing, because each publisher, an individual publisher within a broader publishing company, might be doing 12 books in a year, up to 20, if they're really pushing it. So they might just not have space for a book like yours.
Mm.
It might not be what their list needs. They might think, oh, this is pretty well written, but I can't really see how I would pitch that. So maybe I'll just leave that to someone else. They're looking at your book as something that they can pitch as a product in their broader list and what they can allocate resources to and all these sorts of other considerations that you're probably not aware of and couldn't possibly be aware of. So often rejection doesn't mean that it's bad writing or a bad book. It's just that they can't see how they specifically will publish it effectively or how it will add to their bottom line often. Mm-hmm. So I know it's extremely disheartening. And I do always like to say when I send rejections, firstly, this is extremely subjective. Different publishers feel completely differently about the same book. I've read a lot of books that are published that I didn't particularly like that other people clearly loved because they're bestsellers. And also there often is a home out there. There could be someone who is the right publisher for it and they're like, this is exactly the kind of book that I need right now. I'm so glad this came into my inbox. So I definitely encourage people to keep trying, even if they get a couple of rejections, because it's not necessarily about the quality of the book.
That's really, really good advice. Ruby, you mentioned that sometimes, like you said, the writing's good, but it's just not what you're looking for. So what are you looking for in the next 12 months? What's hot on your list?
That's actually something that we're in a little bit of a process of working through. I mean, we've just got a new publishing director, which is really exciting, Kate Blake. She's an absolute gun. She published The Happiest Man on Earth, publishing Hayley Scrivener, Prima Facie. She's really, really fantastic publisher. So we're actually currently in the process of figuring out our strategy for our next steps. So it's an exciting time, but it also means I can't give you the clearest answer that I would. What I can say is that I've always loved crime and thriller, especially at the sort of, not necessarily literary, but towards that end. It's got that little bit of a sophisticated side to it. I love history, historical fiction, which, as you know, Madeleine, again, I love it when it's got that deeper idea within it. I love commercial fiction as well, but especially if it's got a bit of satire, and I get to lean a little bit into my my biases and my personal tastes at this point, I think, as we're figuring out our strategy, because these are the kinds of books that I love reading. I love books that are funny. And so I'll often, if something is genuinely funny and well done, I will perhaps cross into genres that I wouldn't have done otherwise. And in nonfiction, a good travel memoir is always a helpful thing, a really nicely done one.
And that's how you picked up Pip Williams, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's how we came to Pip. Memoirs, memoirs from people who aren't celebrities are tough, but when there's a travel aspect to it, it can be firstly really nice to work on because you get to armchair travel through this book, but also it does seem to have more of an audience, and we've found that we can often do quite well with those. And I don't know, just interesting books.
Yeah,
I know everyone thinks their books is an interesting book, though, so it's probably too broad.
That's so fun, though, that you get to sort of figure out what the strategy is going to be. And I think, too, it's great that you can put your personal preferences in that. I've seen the amount of work and dedication that you have to give to these books. If you don't love it, it would make your job pretty torturous, I would imagine. I think you've read it, other than me, the most times of anyone of my books. So...
And it's really changed. Don't you think it's interesting, isn't it? How you get these other brains. And we've also had, obviously, my colleague who's fantastic, Laura.
Yes, Laura, she's amazing.
Diving in as well. And it's kind of nice. And you've been great with this, is when you go on that ride with an author of helping them nut out the problems, and the book shifts and it still keeps where it was originally, but it just finds its form over time. And that's very satisfying to be able to be part of that and to work through that and see it at every stage. And then you hit a stage where you're like, I can't look at this book again, and I'm going to just leave it now and not read it again for as long as I possibly can.
I mean, I love it. And I have to say that, I love my book. But when I do the final proofread, I will not be picking it up again. That's it. I have to say goodbye.
That's very normal. That's healthy, actually.
Can I ask a question on that? What advice do you have for emerging authors who want to submit their book? They feel like they've got it as far as it can go, or maybe they're still thinking or trying to get it as perfect as possible. But as you said, sometimes even after submissions and acquisitions and the book's signed, there's some big changes that can happen. What advice do you have for authors who are trying to get it to the perfect stage, but in a way, there still is a little bit of room once it's submitted?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is exactly what you mean, but be prepared for the work not to be finished when you get a publishing deal, because it won't be. It's very rare to get sort of trade oriented. And by trade, I mean, getting it ready for the market feedback before you have a publisher on board. So you can do really good work, and you should, keep working on your book or on other books if you need a break from it while you're searching for a publisher, and do try to get it as good as you can. But it's not going to be your last draft. Very, very unlikely. I don't think I've seen any book where the first draft goes completely unchanged. So go into that knowing that you have people who are there to help you make the book as engaging as possible for an audience who we want to buy the book and then feel like they've spent their money well. And publishers are experts in that. That's all they do all the time, is figuring out how to make books suit the biggest possible audience. And if you're not a publisher, it's just very hard to know that. And even if you are, you probably haven't had outside perspective or enough outside perspective to know for sure that you've done the very best version of the book that you can do. It is a collaborative process. So if you do want to get published by a trade publisher, just be ready to collaborate.
And maybe just making sure that the story is the best that you can get it, and possibly not sweating on the smaller stuff,
No, definitely don't spend hours trying to fix typos. I mean, try to make the language reasonably clean, but that's so down the track. Do as much as you can with the story, make it as strong as you can, highlight the bits that you think are the most interesting and appealing. But yeah, don't slave away over polishing, because most likely there'll be someone down the track who is a fantastic copy editor, a fantastic proofer, who are there specifically to help with that. And things change so much before that stage anyway, that it's probably a bit of a waste of your time to work on too deeply on anything other than, the base, the quality of the writing on the line, yes, but it doesn't have to be perfect and accurate. There's time for that.
I've had so many people, actually, probably people outside the industry, say to me, "Oh, how do you feel about your work being edited and people making like changes to your work and everything?" And I think what you said was really important, that it's a collaborative process. In no way have you or Laura said to me, "You must do this." It's always been a conversation about how we can get it to be the best book it is. And while the book, like you said, has changed so much and the essence of it has stayed the same, and it didn't actually feel complete until we went through that the third round of structural edits until I finally finished it. And then I was like, oh, this is the book that it was meant to be. And it took collaboration to get there, I think. Otherwise, before that, it was just a book in my head. But after it's gone through, the minds of so many. So I think being open to that, and you've probably come across, lots of sort of robust conversations with authors about their work. And it's you approach it in such a sensitive way. And I would imagine, though, there would be some occasions where some authors aren't that thrilled to change some of their work.
Honestly, I haven't had a huge issue with that, partly because I'm pretty upfront when I acquire something about that's going to be part of the process. So maybe I'm just lucky, or maybe by the time authors get to me, they've been told this before. I haven't had a huge issue with authors getting super upset about something I've suggested. Maybe more when I was a newer editor and it was perhaps someone else was the publisher. They've handed it over to me. I might be making some suggestions that are a little bit challenging. But to be honest, the more experience you get, the more people take you seriously. So that's also quite helpful. Most people I find are just extremely grateful and really get a lot out of the process. So I don't have too many horror stories. Maybe just my authors are too nice.
Oh, I'm glad. That's fantastic. I think, though, it is, like you said, I think it's a privilege to be edited. That's how I've always seen it. The fact that you're able to share this work with other people is incredible. So,
yeah, I've been treating it and looking at it like it's actually a masterclass in which will help you write, learning all these things through the process from these really experienced people in industry. So, there's no better way to learn and no better teachers to learn it from. And it's only going to help for future books and future writing.
And I think with publishing, and this is something I think most publishers will tell you, it's for very few writers, like it will only be a career, like a full-time career for a handful of writers. For most people, it's something that they have to balance with other parts of their life. So you've got to come into the process being like, this is something I want to enjoy and get something out of. I want to get better at what I can do. I want to learn. I want to have fun. Because if not, then you're just going to be very disappointed when you get, the average sales and the average paycheck that people get for the enormous effort of writing a full-length manuscript and getting it published.
There's you do a lot of this for love, I think, and you have to.
And I think publishers are aware of that too for writers. We do try to be, different publishers have different styles, but certainly for me, I'm conscious that it's a big ask for someone and that you are sort of stepping into a really personal space for them, not just with the content of the book, but with their desire to be a writer and to kind of have this career. And it's important to be sensitive and to be, honest and open and collaborative, partly because, it's a big thing for people. Even though, once you've done hundreds of books, you can forget that sometimes, but you get reminded pretty regularly.
What's your favourite part of the process after you've gone and acquired a book? Is it the editorial, or is it the next stage, production, when it starts going to that stage?
It's changed over time. There was a stage where copy edits were my favourite part, and I loved just getting on the line, and I really loved books that needed to be essentially book doctored. I don't know if you've heard that term, where it's, a book that, like, it's a really great concept and there's lots of good aspects to it, good author, but it just needs someone to kind of rewrite it. And I would love that. I just loved the creativity of that and the level of intervention that I could do. Now there's no way in hell I want to do that. I've done enough of them. At this stage, I'm really enjoying the publishing side of things. That's the pitch. It's coming up with the cover. It's coming up with the strategy for how you're going to get the book out there. It's also still the structural work, which I do enjoy, but it's much less detail. And I think it's just a matter of, I've done that detailed side of the work for so long that I'm really enjoying this big picture stuff at the moment. But I might, burn my way through that and want to go back to being a proofreader.
No, please don't, Ruby. You're too good of a publisher, I think.
Ruby, can we ask you about acquisitions and the acquisitions process? It's something that it's hard to find information on what happens in the acquisitions meeting, and I'm so intrigued by it. And I did lots of Googling and searching and finding podcasts and anything I could about what happened in the acquisitions meeting when I heard that my own manuscript was going. Can you give us a little bit of an insight on that?
I can give you a little bit of an insight, but not the full insight, because different publishers do it differently. Most publishers, as far as I know, will have an acquisitions meeting where the publisher will bring or a commissioning editor perhaps will bring their proposed title to the meeting. They'll pitch it and they'll have people from the sales team, from marketing, publicity, all there to poke holes in it, essentially, and try to see if it will hold water or not. They sound quite intimidating, but also could be quite exciting. Different publishers probably run them a little bit differently. What we've done traditionally at Affirm Press has been super casual. It's been much more along the lines of me picking something up, going to the owners, hey, this book is a historical fiction about the Little Lon district in Melbourne. It's based on the author's own family. She's got this crazy background, and one of her ancestors was a notorious madam of a brothel. What do you think? And they'll go, oh yeah, that sounds all right. And then I'd go, okay, well, this is how much I want to offer for it. And we'd talk a bit of back and forth on it. It was very, very casual. We've made it a little bit more formal recently, where we try to fill in a pitch document, and we sort of, a bit like a more complicated, more numbers-driven version of what an author will do when they submit their pitch to us in the first place. It'll include comparison titles and how much they sold and things like that. I'll send it around to sales team, publicity team, marketing team, and other publishers, and just get feedback. That's probably going to change again. I think we will be heading towards acquisitions meetings now that we've got the new system. So there are all sorts of ways to do it. The big thing to be aware of with it is that if you feel nervous going to a publisher, the publisher's girding their loins to go to the acquisitions meeting and really preparing themselves to be interrogated and to have to really defend their decision and say why they love this book. So you're not alone.
It's also so heartbreaking if acquisitions, so if publisher likes your book, but the acquisitions meeting says no, and that can be awful.
Yeah, it could be, but then it's often, and that's awful for the author. But I will say that in my experience, getting that feedback is useful, because I came through the editorial department, so I know that side of things really well. I'm not an expert in marketing in the way that the marketing manager is. And so they can come in and say, oh, look, this sounds great, but I might face this problem and this problem. And then the salesperson will say, look, that sounds great, but booksellers probably won't connect with it because of this and this. And as a publisher, I want my book to succeed. It's essentially getting advice. Like, I want and need my books to succeed in the market. So it's getting expert advice is what the acquisitions meeting is. And that's how I look at it when I go and send it around. It's not them saying, I don't like it, so you're wrong. It is often them giving their advice from the departments that they understand much better than I do. And so in that sense, I find them very, very helpful, and I don't feel too hurt when they give me good reasons for why a book isn't right for our list. But it's so hard to tell the authors that. And I do try to sort of be sort of straight up with them that, again, another publisher may find another approach that does work. So, if you've gotten to the point of an acquisitions meeting, that's actually a really positive step, and that should be encouraging to you. Even though it's obviously going to be disappointing, you should feel encouraged to keep trying, or at least keep trying with your next project. It means that you've obviously got something. So keep at it.
That's great advice, Ruby. So we were going to ask you, and that is a really good tip for emerging writers. What is your top tip for emerging writers?
Yeah, a bit like that. It's just go for it. Get it out there. Let people read it. Don't be too shy. Don't be too afraid. Be ready for honest feedback and try to keep bouncing back. I think that's the best possible way to approach it. And part of that is often, I think, having multiple projects on the go at the same time. If you're sending your book out there and waiting to hear back about it, it's so much easier if you're working on your next book already. We've had lots of authors who've got about 3 finished manuscripts that they got through before they found one that was publishable. And one in particular, Christian White, if you can hear about his first manuscripts, like one was about a giant slug. They're just absolute madness. And he's never going to publish them because they're ridiculous. But he got to this point with The Nowhere Child of this amazing, amazing manuscript that was a big hit. So just get out there, keep working, keep writing, keep pitching, and keep getting better.
Love that. The giant slug. Look, there might be a market for it in future. You never know.
I keep telling him to send it to me, but he's saying no.
I love that. And we thought we'll just finish off, Ruby, as well. What's your top tip for both Tina and I as we're about to embark on a very special year next year when our debuts come out into the world?
Just be open to whatever happens, and try to have fun with it. You can do as much as you can within, your role as writer and do your best possible job. Certain aspects of it are out of your control. Markets are unpredictable, readers are unpredictable. You never know. You could have a massive hit. You could just do okay. Try to make it a process that you enjoy. And I think you guys are already into it. Build those communities of other writers. Take it as a chance to meet other people who love books and love writing the way you do, and keep going forward with that. So I think that's the best way. Just keep that attitude that you already have, because even doing this podcast, you're already on the right track as far as making the most of being a debut author. It's the only time you get to do it.
It's true. You only get it once. Well, I take that as endorsement for our Affirm Press WhatsApp group then.
Yeah, look, I am actually quite proud of you guys, just quietly. Terrified but proud. Like seeing your children go to university or something, like, oh my God.
What are they going to get up to?
Yeah. How can they survive without me? Why do they have their own social lives?
All right. Thank you so much, Ruby, for your time. We really appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. We're able to bring you these weekly writerly chats because of our amazing patrons. Join the TPD family by becoming a member of our Patreon community at patreon.com/The Book Deal podcast. And if you love the pod, please give us a rating or review. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook.